been working with a different client group, and I know that Soronians of Changing Lives have done quite a lot of work and quite a lot of thinking.
Yeah.
I think starting from quite a different direction. So Neil and Penny are going to talk a bit about what they've been doing in different bits
like
of
I
them.
said, my background is that I used to manage the women's accommodation, and now I'm doing maternity cover for the GAP project, which is an assertive outreach project working with women that are sexually exploited, are vulnerable to sexual exploitation, doing sex work, either in the escort industry or what we term survival sex work. So they might be doing sex work for a bed or for a bottle or to school or whatever it is. So that's kind of the project outline. Those are the women that we do assertive outreach with, and we also do group interactions with them. The GAP project's been going since 2006, and we now operate in Newcastle and Gateshead. It says 45 to 50 women there, but we've actually got 62 women that we're supporting at the minute, and there's just more and more all the time. So I think as the issue of sexual exploitation is being talked about, the women are kind of like, okay, so this is something that I can share with workers, and it is something that I'm going to get an appropriate response rather than just a bit of an embarrassed look and back down to the assessment. So what the primary aims of the GAP project are is to increase lifestyle choices, eventually to encourage exiting sex work and to help the women kind of get strategies around that, to reduce risk of harm and exposure to sexual exploitation, improve their health and well-being, and improve their mental health, which is what I'm going to talk about mainly today. Can I get a slide? Okay, thanks. So the client group, chronic exclusion factors, disengaged from mainstream services, so really not prioritising anything really other than if they are getting scripts, if they have got a prescription, then go into the harm reduction services and plumber court, that kind of thing, and otherwise not engaging with services. In a battle of homelessness, either sofa surfing, which is predominantly what women's homelessness looks like, but then again we've got our really far extreme end, and then there are women street sleepers that we're working with. Majority involved very negatively in the criminal justice system, in and out of prison, doing survival sex work, escorting, drug and alcohol addictions, and a lot of them having these borderline personality disorder traits, some of which have been diagnosed, a lot of which haven't, and it's really around this work that we've kind of focused on. So the majority have had negative childhood experiences, trauma, sexual violence in their past, and years of this expectation of what the world is like, how they're going to be treated. So that's the primary our work is trying to change that experience, and that's why the GAP project is a long-term project. Some of the women that was with us in 2006 are still with us today, and we would argue that that's not because we're not showing outcomes, that's because it really is a long-term change, and we measure distance travelled rather than has this woman exited sex work, yes or no. It's not really about that. It's like where was she, where has she ever got to, where did she go back to, where did she lapsed, how much has she got further forward. So it's always this dynamic process. It's not a linear thing of recovery. So I don't know what the next slide is. You surprised me. Okay. So what we were doing in the early days, not that I was there, but what the GAP project did in the early days was very much firefighting, so crisis management. We were working with women that had not had a sexual health test ever, for example, yet they were seeing multiple clients every week. They were not having benefits, weren't on scripts. In our peer research, the average amount of money spent on heroin was £130 So, really high-end, chaotic stuff. So we started working with them and made their lives better in the way that they were on scripts. Maybe they'd have a bed, they'd have their benefits, but it kept going back and forth. So it was like, what really is the pathway for change? What are we actually going to do with these women other than just firefighting all the time? So we really looked at that, and then it was all about staff training support and putting in a model, a PI model, So Durham Shah, a psychotherapist, was seconded to what was then Cyrenians and started working with the women's services, so with our 2 outreach projects and with the accommodation services. And that was primarily around clinical consultancy at first, so really unpicking what we were doing with these women, what the plan was. And then all of women's services were trained in personality disorder training, and we started noticing that actually this is the experiences of these women, so they don't really know how to cope with everyday life. So maybe something what we would term very small might trigger some massive reaction. So for instance, they get paid their benefit a day late, and that's it. You know, they're back to square one. They've used already. By the time they've told you there's a problem, they've started doing sex work. They're in a right state. So these were kind of the kind of things that they were presenting with. So the first thing was to have every women's services staff member trained the basic 3-day personality disorder training. And that really helped kind of like what like you were saying, like really expecting and preempting really what might happen and why it's happening. And then regional collaboration. So we started the North East Sex Work Forum to really talk about what other people's experiences around the region was. And as well, some of our women are quite transient, so we were seeing the most chaotic women popping up in the service in Middlesbrough or service in Stockton. So it was about talking about it. And then a way out, also seconded a psychotherapist into their project. That's just a little picture of our regional learning days. That was one of the things that we did together, was put on a big regional learning day just last month to share best practice around what we were doing and sharing our work. So the interventions, long-term intensive outreach support with drop-ins, focused on the relationship and positive experiences. And then interventions are all leading to the women taking part in our DBT skills training group, which really fits with the model recovery, but it's this kind of pre-therapy therapy. I mean, none of our women in the GAP project have ever completed or participated completely in any kind of counselling or anything like that, because they're just not ready for that stage. So the DBT skills training group is very much around coping with negative emotions, managing negative emotions. Your benefit doesn't get paid, doesn't mean you fly off the handle. You're going to be able to tolerate that distress and try and work out of it rather than going back to square one. So that's delivered with one of the GAP development workers, Emma Madison, and our psychotherapist, Durham Shah. As well, very much part of that group is a volunteer. She has been an ex-service user. She's very much involved in developing what that programme looked like. She's involved in supporting the women getting there. She's the one that does the phone calls to remind them they have to come. You know, so it's really kind of integrating that experience of like, right, she can do it, so maybe I can do it too, kind of thing. So before we get to that stage, like I said, very much therapeutic relationship building, environments and experiences. So we don't, as an assertive outreach project, we don't have this one building, this one accommodation. So we're looking at trying to take those positive experiences to many different locations and just holding that with the relationship with the support worker. But we've done various different things to kind of recreate those environments and give those women those positive experiences. They can just get maybe a glimpse of what life could be like. So even if they have that glimpse and they change for that time, and then they lapse or relapse, they remember that actually I can participate in that different type of life. I can get a little bit of that. So we've done things like taking them to Edinburgh Cyrenians farm for a week. We did lots of team buildings, we did holes, we fed chickens. You know, it's just a completely different type of life than living on Westgate Road in Newcastle, walking out your front door and being propositioned. You know, and that's how it is, you know. I'm experienced this myself. Pamper days, jewellery making. We got some money through mental health prevention to run drama courses around things like self-esteem, self-harm, eating disorders. So they create characters and do drama performances around that. And all of that was around having that psychologically informed environment. Where are we going to run these programs? Why are we taking them to the farm? Are we just going for a jolly? You know, really knowing why it was that we were doing these things, and sharing that with the women, kind of like, well, this is what we're doing and this is what we hope to achieve. So the dialectical behavioural training therapy, the main objective is to learn new skills in changing difficult patterns of behaviour in life which causes distress, which I've already talked about. On the next slide, there's just some examples of the types of... So the outline of the programme. It's 24 weeks. You can come in at any of these 2 weeks mindfulness. You can do it as many times as you like. We've got one woman that's on her third time round and doing really well and really positive. So the mindful, so distress tolerance, emotional regulation and interpersonal skills. Focusing on the really important part to do homework, you know, so they're really focusing on, well, what went well this week? Why did that happen? What could I do differently? So those are just some of the examples of the things that we do in the group. So how we're recording all of this, like I said, it's very much about distance travelled. Iram Shah worked with the GAP staff as well as the volunteers and the women to really develop a psychologically informed journey, and that fits with the recovery model as well. It very much fits with the Cyrenians Changing Lives ethos of, you know, we're on a journey together, and you know there's going to be step backs and step forward, and we do use the outcome star as well. So the types of outcomes recorded are about, are they accessing drug and alcohol treatment? Are they engaging with sexual health? What's their money management like? And then really measuring where they are with their sexual vulnerability, sexual exploitation vulnerability. Are they still working? Are they not? What are their defence mechanisms about relapsing, lapsing, engaging with other services as what their needs are, and housing. So you probably won't be able to read that, but I have brought some copies. So this is the GAP project journey. So this is how we record outcomes. So at the very first stage of that, and this is where the majority of women come in, it's pre-stage change, it's harm reduction. We have a group that's actually based in Plummer Court, in the harm reduction service in Newcastle, and we really encourage the staff there to give the women their appointments on a Tuesday when we're upstairs, and we can really try and grab the women then and there while they're actually doing what they're focusing on at the moment, which, like I said, is about their scripts, that kind of thing. Trying to move them out of that harm reduction to accepting help stage, crisis intervention and practical emotional support, through to change stage and progression, which might look like something like they've got their housing, they've got their benefits. We will start to talk about exit strategies at that time, and then we will work through to self-resilience, so they're very much leading their recovery. DBT programme, that's about where they would be on that, and that's based in the Changing Lives Recovery Centre to really give them that feeling of everyone around you is abstinent or trying to achieve abstinence. The recovery centre is a very respectful place. You know, you can't turn up there drunk, you can't turn up there under the influence, and that's that glimpse of, okay, so these are these environments, trying to build that positive peer support, and then right through to exit stages and maintaining exit stages. We also record any returnees to the project, and we're finding something really interesting, is where the returnees to the project does not equate to starting sex work again at all. If they return to the project, it might be for some emotional support rather than, that I've started this again. So the returnees to the project, then they're accessing something different at that time. It doesn't mean that they've gone right back to the very start. So we use outcome stars as well. This is really difficult to do with the women. It does tend to be kind of a staff-led interaction. I don't know if you find the same. It's very hard to get them to sit down and plot it all out, but it does work. It fits once again with solution focused and recovery model, and that's the end. Yeah. So have you got any questions? I think I felt like I pushed through that a little bit. Yeah.
I thought it was quite interesting that they essentially brought mental health into the project. You've got obviously a consultant psychiatrist, because I think women's experiences often is that it is abuse that is taken into mental health services, and then that abuse disappears from the agenda, if you like, in terms of the support given. I just wonder how much mental health services, the broader mental health services, engage with your project. Have you brought mental health in because they stood so far outside?
I mean, being an outreach project, we don't really have so much of a space to bring them in, but we kind of act as advocates. So those women probably wouldn't go to meet their CPN unless their gap support worker was there, just because that's the familiar face. So that's kind of what we focus on, is just getting the women to the appointment. We might go to those appointments 2 or 3 times. For example, we've got a woman that is going through transgender. She's got to meet a gender specialist. She's got to meet a mental health specialist. She's got lots of sexual health kind of things that's going around that, like sexual mental health. So we attend every single appointment with her. And I think you might say that's a bit hold-handing, but it's recognising where she is on that gap project journey. If we didn't go with her, she wouldn't go. And yes, we will work towards kind of like trying to get her to be a little bit more independent about that stage. It's really recognising that she's not there yet, and she might not be there for a year, and that's okay. I think that's something about the gap project as well, is that we're looking at outreach project, because I've worked in accommodation before, and sometimes you have to say enough's enough because there's at-risk management, you've got other residents to think of. But with the gap project, we'll never say that's the end of the service. It's completely up to them. We've got women on our books that aren't doing sex work. They're completely in that exiting self-reliance stage, but they don't want to leave the service, and that's fine. We might call them once a month or get a text, and that's absolutely fine, but it's about that positive relationship and that consistency which these women with their personality disorder, they've just never had. So it might be 6-7 years, and that's fine. It's just we would never close one unless they're saying, yes, this is what we want you to do, close me, that's fine. They can just be there and we'll hold them.
I don't have a question, but just a couple of observations
Yes.
I'd be interested in. Firstly, I think you're quite right. I'm a big fan of the outcome style. I think it's the best thing we've got. But it isn't just a measurement tool, it's a tool for engagement. And sometimes it's the wrong tool for that particular moment in time. So sometimes it does have to be staff-led. So you've got a beginning, but you can't expect full engagement. In effect, working actively on your outcome style comes in the middle bit, doesn't it, of your, I don't know whether there's something down here, but your 4 or 5 layers of engagement and moving on. So I think you're entirely right. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't use it, but I don't think we should actually have different tools for different stages, because we need the coherent throughput.
I think also to get an adequate assessment at the early stages. You know, you're just starting to learn about each other, and sometimes people haven't disclosed fully, you know, what other issues they have. And so the outcomes start too early, is you sort of get in realistic number 1 circle, and it's not until later on that you actually get the real truth. Yeah. And so it's kind of go like this, and it hopefully will go a little bit more smoothly.
And giving staff permission to recognise that you shouldn't necessarily be pushing this if it isn't the right thing at the moment, I think is really, really important. But the second thing I thought was fascinating. You know, I've been very keen on this sort of the built environment creates social spaces, and those are the things that create the community and the opportunities and the interactions. But the idea that the rest of the built environment, not just the bit you own and manage and run, but the rest of the built environment, you know, like the Starbucks and the park and so on, that's also a built environment with social spaces and opportunities that you can work with that are a resource. Oh, that's beautiful. I'm going to steal that.